Bananas. Good to see you. Look how handsome you are with this beard. You're way better looking than Justin Trudeau.
That's my COVID-19 beard and haircut.
It's looking good. Did you see
Thank
that
you.
photo?
Yeah, I seen that photo. Justin Trudeau, and he came out to title lands in Tsilhqot'in area. So did a formal apology to the Tsilhqot'in people for the hanging of our Tsilhqot'in war chiefs of 1864. We did that in Ottawa, and we told them that we've come and we've honored them in their government house, and that it was up to Justin Trudeau, if this is true reconciliation, to come to Tsilhqot'in, come to our government house, and make the exoneration and the apology direct to our membership on what we consider sacred land, our lands, Tsilhqot'in lands. There was a reluctancy to come out, but I told them the story that during the hanging of our war chiefs, our head war chief, Tsilhqot'in, who was captured, under a flag of truce. They were going into camp to talk peace talks, but they put their weapons down when they went into camp. There was much division amongst the Tsilhqot'in. A lot of our warriors that don't go. It's a trick, but he felt there was a need to have those talks, discussions, and when they went into camp, he was and his warriors, and they were jumped, they were shackled, they were brought to Quinal. On when they were bringing him to Quinal, they put him on a big black stallion, and they chained his ankles underneath the horse and brought him to Quinal, where they tried him as a murderer. And Tsilhqot'in's last statement was that wasn't murder, that was war. And he was executed along with his son, who was not a warrior and who did not participate in the in any of the war activities. And shortly after they were executed, that black horse, his black horse, black stallion, got away on the captors, and it swam 2 rivers to come home to the Bull Canyon area, and it returned. So when it returned back to the village riderless. That riderless black stallion horse represented everything that's wrong with Canada today. You want reconciliation, you're going to have to come to the Tsilhqot'in lands. You're going to have, and we'll put you on a black horse, and we'll allow that black horse to re-enter our village, and with you riding that horse. That's going to represent reconciliation to the Tsilhqot'in. More than your words, more than anything. We want that black horse to re-enter. When that came back without a rider, that represents so much emptiness and mistrust and all of those things. So we got him on a black horse, and we rode him into our village, and
he took off, Chief Joe. He took off, didn't he?
Yeah, he there's a little bit of a rebellious spirit in that prime minister. He didn't just want to walk down, he wanted to get up and move. He said, what beautiful country. Who wouldn't want to gallop their horse across such a valley with the background of snow mountains like that? Let's run it, he said. I said, well, you're the prime minister. You run, I'll run with you.
Well, we got ahead of ourselves here, Chief Joe. Can you introduce yourselves for people who don't know you?
I'm Chief Joe Alphonse. I'm Tsilhqot'in Community Chief. I'm also Tsilhqot'in National Government Tribal Chair and Spokesperson. I've been chief now going on 12 years. I guess this February. Prior to that, I worked 9 years as executive director for Tsilhqot'in National Government, and 9 years before that, I started in the fishery department and worked and held just about every position within that tribal organization. So, spend most of my life working to improve lives of our membership. When I started work, we weren't even allowed to mention Aboriginal right. So can we mention Aboriginal right, let alone title? We get kicked out of meetings with government and they shutter everything down. So my goal was to always to do the impossible, to go out and change our fortune. And about the only way to do that was to win Aboriginal title. So as a nation, we explored all of our options, including the BC Treaty process. But because of our history as Tsilhqot'in people and the Tsilhqot'in War, that wasn't acceptable. We wouldn't surrender our rights to anyone to enter a treaty process, whatever. So, and we also believe treaties are nation to nation. We believe we are a nation. We have to act as a nation. And that's been my journey from an executive director position. We got to BC Supreme Court and we got a ruling there, and we were before the courts in appeal courts, and that's when it was time to move into the next phase, and that's chieftainship phase, and move our case forward to the Supreme Court of Canada, which we did, and we got a favorable decision there. It was really stressful time. Most people, not one Aboriginal organization or Aboriginal lawyer in Canada at the time, believed we could win Aboriginal rights and title. They strongly encouraged us not to. But as Tsilhqot'in people, there's nothing better than a good fight, and we know who we are. We know what's right. We know what's honorable, and to say that these lands are our lands, we're not lying. We're not whatever. That's the truth, and we said if nobody believes we're going to win, that's all right. We believe, we know what's right. That's all we need. And as long as we're fighting, we'll keep fighting. The question really is Supreme Court of Canada and the country Canada ready to recognize, to see us as real individuals for the first time. So we're gonna move forward, and we did move forward.
And you're referring to 2014, right? This was a court case that was unprecedented in Canada, 25 plus years in court, right, for Tsilhqot'in communities, a lot of oral history, a lot of Tsilhqot'in language that was spoken. And then in the end, Indigenous or Aboriginal rights and title was recognized in Canada's highest courts, but not in all of your traditional territories, only a percentage. Is that right?
You look at we didn't push for the whole territory. Our belief was we were going to go and seek Aboriginal title. We did that to a small portion of our overall territory. The areas that we had claimed and put before the courts, roughly 50% of the area was recognized as title lands, and even that's a mystery. Like, how can you own something over here but not own that over there? Like, a judge or somebody just drawing a line. So to us, we own all of that, and the goal was to get title, to prove that we exist, prove that we had political structures, that we had laws far more complicated the laws and stuff, and one that actually worked. It worked with the people. It worked with the land. Our laws, our governance structures allowed us, our people before contact, to manage our lands to make it look like it was untouched.
Mm-hmm.
Now you look at all of our territories. You look at the state our forests in, and the state of our salmon, the state of our, now we have moose disappearing. We have our woodland caribous declining, and our steelhead stocks are declining, and on the brink of extinction, and on and on and on. Like, there's not one level of today's governance that's actually managing anything in a right way. So,
Mm-hmm.
I tell our people, don't be intimidated, don't be afraid to fail. Look what
Mm-hmm.
Canada and BC are doing. Like, they're failing at everything. I have confidence we can do better than that.
Mm-hmm.
And you allow enough time to bring back our traditional ways of managing, and we'll rewrap it in a modern way, and we'll release that back to our membership, and we will bring this country back to our territory, back to its former glory before contact.
Chief Joe, can you tell me a little bit about Tsilhqot'in laws? How did you learn about your laws? Was that passed down to you through oral history, oral traditions from family members? How do you learn about your laws, and are they still being upheld in practice in your traditional territories?
I think our laws, like most First Nations anywhere, it's passed down, from your parents, grandparents. We're taught those things, in the evening when storytelling. That's where a lot of that stuff comes down from, and from there it's carried out by our hereditary chiefs. I don't even like to call it hereditary for Tsilhqot'in. It was more custom,
Mm,
not hereditary. Hereditary is like father to son, father to son. And Tsilhqot'in, it was like we're a small nation compared to everyone else, so we always had to have strong leadership. And sometimes, sons may not have the same qualities as the father. So in those cases, our people would make a change. We couldn't
mhm,
afford weak leadership, so it was dealt with, immediately and stuff. So our laws are there, and and I think it's ingrained in our genes and the way
mhm,
we are as people. So as you walk, you know what's right and what's wrong, and
mm,
everything's for the benefit of the community, not the individual. And today's world, everything's geared for individual people, whatever, and stuff, and that wasn't the way for our people. And some of the challenges and struggles that we have today is based on those values that don't belong to us incorporated into our lives. So we have to do the best we can to shred as much of that as we can. And
mm. Chief, can you give me an update? What's been your biggest battle in the recent weeks? What do you want people to know about what your nation and your community in particular has been facing in terms of dealing with BC and Canada lately?
I think we have quite a history as my community. 2017, we faced the 2017 fire season,
Mm-hmm.
and we had two of the three largest fires ever recorded in Canada in my territory around my community. And we were the first community in Canada to say no to an evacuation order.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't leaving. We stayed. We fought, and we saved our community. Our community. We have 150 homes in our community, and we figured if we left, we probably would have lost anywhere from 60 to 80 homes. We would have never
Mm-hmm.
recovered. We stayed. We fought as a community. Everyone in the community that stayed behind had a role in the community, and they worked, and we saved. And we did that with having confidence and training and knowledge of how to deal with stuff like that. So So we're very accustomed to dealing with very stressful situations. Obviously, this COVID-19 situation is not unique to any part of the world. Everyone in the world's gone through this, and it's been stressful. It's been very. It's you get the majority of our people that actually know what we're dealing with and are willing to work with us, but we have elements within our community. Says we had an individual that tested positive. And he came into the community to visit for 2 hours, so he exposed our community. So um, we we were forced to go into 2-week lockdown period.
And what
We
happened
did
with
not.
that, Joe? That was an inmate, is that right? That was an inmate that tested positive. Like who tested him? What was he doing in the community? And, what's some of the backstory there?
Yeah, he was individual that was, at the institute in the Lower Mainland where a lot of inmates had tested. One of the biggest problems we had is that we weren't given the authority or the privilege to that information they couldn't share with us because individuals have individual right to privacy and all of that. So
Mhm.
we're really operating on just tidbits of information, but we did, and we're aware that he had actually tested positive. But as it turns out, he did go into 2-week quarantine before he was released, and
Mm.
but we weren't aware that we weren't given that information, and we have to act in from the point of view that he was a live carrier when he came into our community and treated as such for the protection and safety of all of our members. So we did that, and we're gearing down. We're still in that lockdown period.
Mm.
Everything will be opened up in on Friday, this coming Friday. But the period 5 days to 11 days is the period where if somebody's exposed, that's gonna show up. And fortunate for us, nobody else has tested positive, so we might have dodged a big bullet there, but it was good practice.
Mm.
When you go down and you lock down your community, you're going to see everything. You're going to see, all the social issues that you have. You're going to see your drug runners, your liquor store, all the addictions come out, and people's tensions are high, so they turn more into their addiction. So
Mm.
it's not a pretty picture in some cases, but as a leader, you have to see that to know where your people are at, and
Mhm.
and we will follow this up Monday next week, and we will have a full review of all the things that we went through and document that. And
Mhm.
it's good practice so that next time this situation is comes forward again, we will have an even stronger plan, and we will eliminate all the loopholes that we went through. And then on the larger issue, we got a big fight to deal with the addictions of our people that are happening. And anytime you're a big crisis, liquor stores should be shut down, and that
Mhm.
isn't the case
Mhm.
in my territory. And it seems like sales are going even higher, and with the
Mhm.
amount of government grants that have been granted out, and in most cases, people are making more money during crisis than they were when they were working.
Mm.
And people with addictions, they spend all of that on addictions. So there's
Mm.
a lot more alcoholism, drug use, and stuff like that. So things that
Mhm.
we have to cut down and
Mhm.
quit ignoring. So that's part of self government, and
Mhm.
to having self government, if your people are too weak in their addictions and they're
Mhm.
not there socially, so that has
Mhm.
to be the biggest challenge that you
Mhm.
have. Try to get your people back to a healthy state, a state of
Mhm.
independence where they're not so dependent on ban offices or anything. Our
Mhm.
people were once strong individual people, and that didn't rely on anyone. They relied on themselves to survive and to continue and to move forward. And it's a long road for a lot of our people, but that's the goal, and that's where we should be shooting to. And we have 100% of our people, our community, if they're completely independent, that's a strong nation. If our people are dependent on band offices, that's foreign to us. That's not. So it's a lot of work. It's been stressful. It's been, but we've been through it, and you do it for the love of your community, the love of your people, and standing. So,
Chief Joe, can I ask you what is the root of those addictions, these social issues that you're facing in your community? What is the root? Are those addictions rooted in your opinion?
I think it's multi-layered, just like most things are, and you have the introduction of we're not governing our own territories. We're not, our people have been brought forward to residential schools, and the betrayal by Canada, all these layers, and our people personal trauma they might encounter, not dealing with a lot of these things, walking away from our traditional practices, of staying healthy. Religion did a good job of destroying a lot of that. So, we have to bring a lot of those things back, make our people proud of being who we are, and know and understand. Depression pills don't work, but for our people, but maybe a half-hour nature walk might be more effective. Using those type of things. But we've faced a lot of trauma as people, and now that we have rights, we have an ability to have an economic base. No more can logging happen, no more can mining happen, or any of those things, unless we as First Nation people consent to that. And most likely that'll happen and occur with economic deals to allow us to develop programs and all of those type of things in the way we know they work. Why do we still have Indian Services Canada developing education models for our kids? We don't need them to do that. We have our own way of teaching and our own programs, and let's do those type of things right across the board. It's the only way we're going to get back to a healthy place.
Speaking of mining, Chief, what's the latest update on the battle against the decades-old battle against Tsilhqot'in mines and trying to protect Tsilhqot'in B, a sacred elevated lake?
The community signed a standstill agreement. This year would have been, this past January would have been the cutoff period, and it would have been done with it. I wanted to fight, but
surprise!
My fellow communities felt it was better that we just sign a 1-year standstill agreement and just keep everything on hold. But so we're waiting for that. I would rather just bite the bullet and deal with the outcome. Let's find out one way or another. This is the last final permit that has to be extinguished, and once that's extinguished, it'll the NDP provincially will have to make a decision. Finally, they have all the power right now to end it, but they won't. They're still hinging on the hope that that mine will still become a reality. But the reality is the province had given their green light over the years, but it's the federal process that said no to that mine twice. So it's to continue to beat a dead horse as far as I'm concerned, and I just as well knowing the stress it's caused my people, our members, to go up against a big industry like that, you have to put a lot of time and energy, and you have to make this fight feel like it's a personal attack on every last Tsilhqot'in person, and we did that. So people carry that to wherever they go, and the sooner we can eliminate that threat as a whole, then the better was my thinking. But the wishes of the majority you have to follow. So I've taken a step back, and I've allowed the other communities to kind of take a lead on this issue, and we'll see where they take it. But if it was up to me, I would want to fight right to the very end with these guys. No love lost with them for me.
What's your opinion, Chief, for other nations who are, dealing with BC and Canada? Do you think going through the courts and that process of attaining rights and title, is that something that you would recommend for other nations, or do you really think it's nation to nation, whatever nations decide is best for them? I mean, because we see that some nations are signing reconciliation framework agreements. There are other agreements being signed provincially and federally, and everyone seems to be taking a different approach. Of course, some people are still dealing with the treaty process, and some people are dead set against it. So do you have any words around that?
I think it's a sad state that we live in today in a country like Canada, where we still have to find a way to improve the lives of Indigenous people. That's the biggest problem. The problem doesn't lie with First Nation people. The problem lies within Canada and British Columbia. Those governments decided this. We don't want third world countries within our country. They can end that. They can make it mandatory for every resource extraction to have a layer of taxation go to First Nation people. That's where all the money from British Columbia and Canada comes from. Taxation from big projects, taxation from those companies, and all of those individuals that work for those big companies pay taxes. All the properties that they live and own pay taxes. They can make a percentage of that go to First Nation people, so that we won't have the need to try to improve our lives. First Nation, we live in third world conditions. Some of our homes, if you did an assessment of it, probably not even worth $100,000 per home. And yet you look at the average home value in British Columbia, you were almost looking at $350,000, whatever. And so we have a long ways to go, and whatever route the First Nation has to take to try to improve their community, whether it's the treaty process or not, that's entirely up to them, and I don't judge them. I think we all have to do what we can, and with whatever knowledge that we have, whatever education level, whatever our history as an individual nation, our nations are all unique and they're all different, and we all have different history. So we all need to take different approaches. So as long as somebody's trying to improve the lives of their people, there's nothing wrong with that, and I will never judge them for that. All I know is this represents Tsilhqot'in. This is why we're doing this, for Tsilhqot'in, not for anybody else. Whatever we've done, we know that Canada and British Columbia is a huge monster to Indian people. They've been a huge burden and struggle, and however you're going to attack that monster, you use whatever you have. Take our Tsilhqot'in case. When we had no leverage whatsoever, so we went out and we said, we have to obtain this. We have to obtain Aboriginal title and prove that. So we did that. So that gives us leverage. So you have to utilize that. You wouldn't want any group of people anywhere in the world to live in the conditions and the way we have as Indian people on Indian reserve land. As my former Tsilhqot'in tribal chair, Irvin Charlie Boy, used to tell government, where Indian reserve is just an over-glorified concentration camp. That's how I look at that.
And you're talking about, like, when you mentioned housing, you're talking about like BC housing standards, on reserve housing standards. You're talking about institutional racism and inequalities that exist on reserve and off reserve as well, right? You're talking about like institutionalized policies that create these sorts of inequitable realities. And that's what a lot of people don't realize, I think, is that there are, legally mandated policies that end up in what you said, concentration camp like realities on reserve that are enforced on people. And this is coming from a history of stolen lands and stolen resources and stolen lives, in many ways as well. So moving forward, you talk a lot about there needs to be more economic benefit for Indigenous peoples. People need to benefit from big projects. They need to benefit from anyone who wants to work or operate in their territory. What other solutions would you recommend to tackle some of those inequities that you've mentioned?
Your voice was really breaking up. I didn't quite get most of that, but I think it varies from where you're at. Are you rural northern British Columbia to First Nation that live in urban settings and in and around places like Vancouver and stuff like that. So it all varies where you're from, and we need to draw on our own projects and generate our own revenues, and however that's, as long as it's acceptable by your membership, that's then we need to exercise that. But our own revenue to develop our own programs is the way to go. Tsilhqot'in problems require Tsilhqot'in solutions, and if nations and communities can't arrive on a solid decision, then they need to continue to show up at the table and continue to talk with one another until the majority of the population can agree on one solid route. It's sometimes a slower process to be involved in, but in the long run, that's our way, and we only move forward when we have a majority, not 51%. If you're moving ahead on a 51% approval, then that project or whatever your initiative is doomed for failure in the long run. So take your time, do your research, check your legends, talk to your elders, talk to your community, find out the best route, and and follow that. And as long as it's supported by everyone, you can't go wrong with that.
And what are some of those Tsilhqot'in solutions? You said Tsilhqot'in problems require Tsilhqot'in solutions. What are some of those solutions that are taking place in your community?
I think for my community, we doing the most we can to work with our offenders. We have a lot of members that are incarcerated, and we want to be involved with them. They're going through a foreign system, and like, for example, the fellow that came forward, and him and his family were all branded. They took a lot of stress, unnecessary stress, all because under the Canadian provincial, nobody can access their information. But my belief is that as First Nation people, we all belong to a communal right to win, and so individuals may have privileges, whatever, but that individual also belongs to a communal right. The community, therefore, has the right to know where all their individuals are. So if they're incarcerated, we don't want them just to spend time there just sitting. We want them to take education courses, cultural programs, counseling. We want them to be better people when they come out, and bring the values of our traditional, a lot of these are young males, they're young guys, and they're lost in the way. So we want to bring our cultural teachings. Like I often tell these guys, I'm coming here to see you, and they're ready to fight it out with me. And I tell them, I come here asking for your help. They often don't know how to respond. What do you mean? Well, you see, the role of a young male before contact was to protect our community, to protect our land, our elders, our women, our children. I need you to do that.
Mm.
I'm just a chief. I can't do all of that. I need your help. You're not doing your job. I need you to come back and create that safe place. You swimming around in your alcoholism, your drugs, you're not creating that. You're creating fear. You're creating, that's not power. Create fear is not create safety. That's power. That's somebody that's going to be respected highly in our community. So you bring back those traditional values as such, and those individuals are going to start thinking justice in a different way. And that's the kind of stuff we need to be bringing forward. Why are we teaching our kids in a 15 by 20 classroom, where all the students are all sitting in rows and stuff? 50% or more of our time we should be have our kids right out on the land, and have land-based education. This is a pine tree. These are pine needles. This is a pine cone. And this is how this works. This is the type of wildlife we have here. Why are we teaching our kids about giraffes and lions? We should be teaching our kids about black bears and sockeye. And suddenly our kids' interests are going to go skyrocket. If your interest is high, you're going to learn. Things like that. So, we need to walk away from and bring back our own old ways of medicine and healing and stuff like that, instead of being reliant on taking 4 or 5 different pills a day and stuff like that. There's a better way of doing things, and be active and get out. So, I think and that applies all throughout our, I tell my psychologists in our community, don't bring people into your office if they got a problem and they have a problem. Take them down to the river and go for a little walk. Next time take them fishing. Next time go berry picking with them. Ask them if they have a problem. Eventually, when they build trust, they're gonna open up, and they're gonna do so more openly when we're in the outdoors. So
Well, and I've had the great privilege to visit your territories. When you raised that challenge, remember I reached out to you on Facebook and you said, hey, if you want to chat, show up. And so, 24 hours later, there I was. And you introduced me to a gymnasium full of community and really raised the stakes and my responsibility as a visitor in your territories and a reporter, who wanted to get the story right, which is how it should be, right? But I had a couple of chances to visit your territories, and they're beautiful, breathtaking, powerful. And so, yeah, and I mean, I've reported on the fight against Tsilhqot'in mines to protect the sacred lake where, folks have camps, culture camps, which it's a sacred part of your territories. And in interviewing you previously, you talked about respect as being one of the primary values for your people. What are some other values that you have as Tsilhqot'in people that maybe differ from Canadian values or the values that are embedded within Canada's legal system and governance structures?
Yeah, that's a long list to talk about. Whatever, it's the way in which they're. I think one of the biggest contributions we have as Tsilhqot'in people and leadership is just to be humble. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whenever you deal with provincial and Canadian authorities, you know, over and over and over again, it seems, you know,
Mm,
the ego of the individuals, we're the authority, you guys are answering to us, whatever, you know, that there's no place for that in our governance. You know, I think about this whole COVID-19 situation, you know, where and what we went through in 2017. You know,
mhm,
2017, you know, the fires were never a threat to my community. You know,
mhm,
provincial and federal governments were, you
mm,
know, they're sitting there, you know, we're the almighty, we control the dollar here. So, you know, and, you know, the promises they made to my community in 2017, you know, do what you can and work to save your community. And as long as it's all work to save that community and the protection of the community, we will have that covered. And, you
mhm,
know, that as of today, they still owe my community $780,000.
mm,
So, you know, when people talk about ISC and EMBC, I tell them, you know, be very vigilant, really monitor your spending and keep checking their guidelines because they will
mhm,
use every opportunity to stick it to you. And you know, they done that 2017 with my community, and you know, we're in the midst of starting a legal challenge on those dollars that are owed to us. And we
mhm,
don't need EMBC. We don't need Canada to manage our people during times of crisis.
mm,
Those financial dollars should not be managed by non-First Nation organizations. You know, where's BCAFN? Where's Union of BC Indian Chiefs? Where's the summit? Where are these people that and organizations provincially and nationally should be advocating to have those dollars and manage those dollars? We don't
mhm,
need EMPC. A lot of these people aren't aware of Aboriginal rights and all of that stuff. So
mhm,
so if you're not careful, you're gonna be left in big, huge financial deficits that
mhm,
they're gonna continue to create new rules and regulations as you go. All I ever ask for is that I want to know what the regulations and what the laws and are beforehand, so that I can always be within those rules and stuff. And you know, and it seems like um, based on my community's experience in 2017, ISC and the MPC developed a lot of regulations which they now use against my community. It was like, you know, I think it's so backwards in their thinking. But you know, we want access and control on all of those dollars. You know, we in First Nation leaders, we don't define our people by on or off reserve. They're
mm,
all our people, and it's all of our responsibility to look after. But our funding is not set up as such through ISC and stuff like that. So there are a lot of policies that are out there that work against any chief and council. So you want to be a chief, you know, you better be a really humble person because you're gonna the challenges you're gonna have. You know, you're gonna be in an uphill battle all the way around on every level, and you
that's
know,
right.
you have to continue to keep breaking down as many barriers as you can. And you
Mhm,
know, for me, I love a good fight. You know, and I love nothing better than fighting with BC and Canada. You know, the fight
mhm,
should not be within your own community or your own nation. It should be outside of that.
mm. Chief, how do you take care of yourself through all of this, especially recently with this whole COVID-19, but then also just in your role as chief, and all of the stress that that takes dealing with these fights? How do you take care of yourself, your spirit? What nourishes you to keep going?
Well, I think you got to allow yourself time off. I'm working on that. It's hard to shut that motor off sometimes, and but in the long run, if you don't practice that and incorporate that, then somebody else is going to shut that motor off for you. And so you need to get out. For me, it's important to be around animals, around horses, my cattle, get it back in nature. I just got back late last night. I went in the back country for a couple of nights, get away from Wi-Fi, telephone, cell phone access, and just spent a good couple nights in the back country. Hit minus 12 the first night I was out. And I don't know if this was a good idea, but we survived it, and we had a couple of very, very peaceful days. I came back late last night. You got to do that. And for me, being in nature, you're checking, monitoring, seeing wildlife, then that gives you an indication where everything is at within your territory and stuff. So doing a little nature walk, riding a horse, all of those things. Get away from people. When I get home, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm done. I need my time, and it's really, really important to always know where you are as an individual with all your stress levels. If you break down and all that, it can be a cruel world that we come from. So you can't help anyone unless you help yourself. And and I believe in ceremony. I believe in prayers, and if it gets a little much, you gotta reach out and ask for help. Whether that helps from your fellow chiefs, your counselors, your elders, your healers. It's important to periodically check in with your healer and get some spiritual work done and things like that. But it all helps. It's different for everyone. Your journey in life, to find a way to walk in a good way and to look after yourself. So you'll never stop learning. Keep exploring and accept all the challenges that come before you.
I can relate to that in terms of, my job is obviously very much online. So I stay seated and I stay on the computer and I stay connected, and it's work I believe in. I'm trying to uphold my responsibilities as well. But by the end of the week, Chief, I shut down my computer, I turn off my phone, and boom, I'm out. I gotta get out. I'm, in the water as a visitor here in these territories, but I gotta disconnect. I gotta come back to a place where I'm, connected to nature, connected to these relatives, and just offline, outside of the noise and the madness. So I really relate to that. That's my medicine as well. And I wish everybody to have that connection, but that's not quite the case. And I think that's kind of what has led us to this moment in history right now. What are more of your thoughts around this coronavirus, which, like you said, has impacted every corner of the world? What brought us here, and how are we going to move forward?
As First Nation people, we've been subject to a lot. Our Tsilhqot'in history, smallpox came in, and that wiped out 80-90% of our people. And during this time, listening to one of my elders talking about the things that they saw and heard, how in the end our people, our healers, couldn't find a solution for smallpox. So our nation decided the best thing to do was to separate, isolate, and each family clan was not allowed to visit one another. They all headed to the mountains, and for one whole year, and at the end of the year, they said they're going to come back and meet at one location. And when they came back, 80% of our population didn't come back. And if you see some of those villages, all the grown-ups, they perish, and then the kids, the babies, end up starving, because there was nobody there to look after them. So we've been through a lot as a people, and we've seen this type of thing before that was introduced to wipe us out, and we survive. And then the Spanish flu came, same situation. our people were dying at such a rapid case. My grandfather, and people, they couldn't dig enough graves fast enough. People were dying that fast.
Mhm.
In the earth, dug shallow graves. So you go to our graves, a lot of our graves are only 3 feet deep. And those are people that died from Spanish flu. So we've seen
Mm.
a lot, and we know. So the best thing we can do to fight and protect is to really push for good practice and isolate yourself. And
Mhm.
if you have to go into a city, do so, but maybe
Mhm.
just send one family member, not everyone. And wear gloves, whatever. You come home,
Mhm.
shower up, wash your hands, wash your face. Take your clothes, throw it in the laundry, everything.
Mhm.
And and if you have a cabin way out in the middle of the wilderness somewhere, you want the safest place in the world, it's go out to that cabin. Even if there's no electricity, you go there, I guarantee you it's a perfect learning opportunity for young
Mhm.
kids. I had my nephew
Mhm.
with me, and we've seen black bears, we've seen deer, mule deer, we've seen eagles, hawks,
Yeah.
fox. We saw a lot of animals. It was a really exciting time for him. It was a learning time. Black bear come out towards our camp late at night. He was all scared, but he survived. And, he's got a story. He's got a story to tell now, and that's
What do you do when a black bear comes up into your camp?
you know not a lot you can do, but we have a big fire going, so send him some smoke. In our
Mhm.
way, you don't talk about the black bear. You don't talk about bears in a negative way. You
Mhm.
do that animal eventually is gonna can hear you, is what our people will say. So you
Mhm.
talk about that animal enough times in a negative way, he'll catch you in the woods by yourself, and he'll make you pay. So you always treat that animal with respect,
Mhm.
and our belief is you talk to that animal, or I talk to him. It's, we're not here to hurt you. You keep moseying on your way, we'll do the same. And yes, so I spoke to him in our language and made sure the fire was going. Animals don't like the smell of smoke, so he stayed away. He did his
Mhm.
thing, and when it was done, he moved on, and we moved on as well. So we all
Mhm.
survived. I,
Last year, Chief Joe, was it last summer? Yeah, I did my first fast, 4-day fast, no food, no water, with the Cree community in, well, what's called Jasper National Park, but that's, traditional, well, it's shared territories traditionally, including, Cree folks, including my own ancestors and relatives. I did my first fast, and on the last day of the 4-day fast, we were woken up by a grizzly bear, a mom, and her cubs. Her cubs were running around our camp, and you're always told kind of by, be careful with grizzly bears, especially moms, with her cubs. But it's a story for another time. I'm not going to go too into it, but she was respectful of us, and we were respectful of her, and we managed to kind of get out of harm's way. And of course, the call at the time was to not call on the park rangers who would come and try and run her out and run this report, but to deal with her in the way that people have always dealt with their relatives, and follow those ways as well. So sometime when I come visit you again, we'll sit down and share some bear stories. But I guess, one of the things I want to ask you is, people have been saying in this moment that Mother Nature, and everyone will have a different word or term, that Mother Nature is kind of putting the world on a timeout. Do you believe that nature and our non-human relatives are really speaking back right now, saying, look, you can't keep going in this way. It's all messed up and out of balance, and we're not going to allow it. Nature, life itself is not going to allow it.
for sure, I think the demands on the planet has been great by the way in which we've been, you know, removing natural resources. Just in my own territory, I recall my father when he was logging and he was a faller, and you know how many fallers it would take just to knock down a small little plot. And yet today, I see one logging machine with one operator, and you know, and in one day's work, to almost knock down 2 square kilometers of forests. You know, and it's eye-opening when you see it, and I guess that's one of the reasons why governments like to hide logging operations and things like that. And we have our own logging shows too, so you know, but to see that firsthand is like, boy, you know, and the people talk about jobs opportunity. You know, if you really want a jobs opportunity, you would go back to the human with the chainsaw as opposed to these big machines rolling all over our territory and stuff. So I think populations have reached a point where there's going to be a lot of outbreaks like this. I think this is the 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 how it's going to be from here on. We can never go back to the way things were before COVID-19 and stuff. And in my own travels, I'm going to be, you know, a lot going to look at things in a different way in terms of how I am in public and washing my hands and things like that, and maybe less reluctant to go to the big cities, and things like that. So I think it's really woke up the world, and it's going to wake up a lot of things. And I think there's going to be a lot of changes, or there better be. This is a war, and if we don't change our ways, then having all these, you know, they come up with a vaccine against COVID-19. Well, a couple of years down the road, there's going to be a new virus, and we're going to keep going through all of this type of stuff. So a lot of things have to change, and being here in Canada, I'm very grateful. Our population in Canada isn't like India or China, so it's a little easier for us, but we still have to do our part and stuff, and hopefully it's going to take everyone all throughout the world not to work together on this, and I hope we get to that place.
Well, Chief Joe, there's a question I want to ask you. This is from Linda Solomon Wood. She's the editor-in-chief of National Observer, and she asks you what advice for the rest of us in BC right now for going into the future. So I know that you kind of answered that in a few different ways, but do you have any other advice for people in BC going into the future? You know, you're talking about there needs to be some changes. Any changes that you'd like to see?
I didn't quite get the last part of your question.
Are there any specific changes that you'd like to see from the population in BC?
Absolutely. I want every last say in my territory. You know, every last operation, you know, anything that's going to happen in our territory has to come through our government. And we have to, and you know, and I know, and continue to push for that. If I don't have that tomorrow, I might have that tomorrow next day, because that fight the law will be there for us. And you know, and that's when our territories are going to be managed in a better way. You know, is when our influences are allowed to trickle, so that it's affected right on the ground, on every level of governance, not just login activities or anything like that, but within our schools, within our social justice, within our community governance, all of those things allow us to be who we are as Indigenous people, and only then can British Columbia and Canada finally see their full potential.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your willingness to interview you, and it was a pleasure and honor to meet you. When I invited you, you surprised me. I get a lot of reporters that come and ask, and I tell them show up. You want our respect? Show up. And not too many show up, but you showed up. I was like, who's that over there? There's a stranger amongst us. They told me, oh, that's that reporter. So, and you've been back. You followed us to Ottawa for the exoneration we had on Parliament Hill. That's the first place I was prejudiced towards any Indigenous people, Indigenous women happen right there on that hill. So it was important for us to go there. And it was a spiritual journey when we did that on the floor of Parliament. I felt our ancestors there, and you could feel that and stuff. But you were witness that, and you've been back to our territory again, and our campfire is always going, and you're always do it. So we'd like to get back to the north here eventually, and have you back in our territory sometime soon. You take care. And we'll see you again. Sachanalya.
Hey, hi, Sachanalya. Thank you so much. And please join me anytime you want to update. Let us know how things are going, and keep your eye out for a Tsilhqot'in husband for me, hey?
Oh, yeah. We'll set you up.
Thanks, Joe. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.